Muna Sheikh Mohamud is a Somali Canadian mother of three children and the writer of the book Abshir's Big Adventures. She talked to us about her publishing and writing experience and the importance of bridging the generational and geographical gaps within the families through her writing. Welcome, Muna, and if you could start by telling us how publishing this book came about.
So I will just start off with the idea of publishing books. I just have always wanted to do writing. I have been the kid in high school and in primary school that wanted to write more and to have essays and have them graded, and completely and wholeheartedly believed that I was going to be a writer, for a professional writer as a career. That didn't happen in my coming to Canada and coming to university and life and practical degrees and all of that and employment. But specifically the idea of writing books for Somali children came to me in 2018 when I went back to visit my family who lives in the Dab in the Somali region in Kenya. I initially started with writing a few just beginner Somali children's books because when I went back, there was a barrier that I experienced with my children and other children that live the diaspora to go back home. And when I say home, could be specifically Somalia or Somali regions of Kenya, Ethiopia, anywhere that you go back home. It's specifically for Abshir's Big Adventure. When I was living, I had this fear of how my kids, especially my oldest, who at that point understood the differences between different environments. I had this fear of how she would feel, if she would know what's going on, where we are going and why. So I tried to look for books to prepare her for the experience. I am somebody who believes that books give you that ability to transport yourself into another world. So I wanted to read to them and tell them where we are going and why and all of that. But I couldn't find a book like this. I couldn't find it in the library. I couldn't find it in bookstores or on Amazon or any of those places. So I decided with the motivation from one of my favorite African-American writers, the late Toni Morrison, who says, if there's a story that you want to read, but it's not written, you have to write it. Right. So I thought, this is my story. Why not? I've always wanted to write. I have a passion for this. And this is a book that I need, that my friends need, that my family need, and that a lot of other Somali kids could use. So that's how the idea came about. And I wrote this book more recently, a couple of years after that, after wanting to write it. It's taken a while to bring the ideas and everything together. But the book and the inspiration for the book came from my experience of going back home in 2018 with my children.
Right. As you know, it's a similar story with a lot of Somali families, especially young families who have first generation kids here. Did you find, once you had that idea, people who shared similar anxieties, if you will, or were thinking of going back but didn't know how their kids would react to this?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the first thing I usually do when I am thinking through these things or when I have a book idea is chat with my friends who have kids, who have first generation kids, maybe groups, Somali women groups, and ask, is this something that other people are experiencing? Is this something that people need? And I definitely found out that those anxieties were there for everyone. The gap was there for everyone. The idea of using books to emotionally prepare the kids may not be shared widely in Somali families, but the anxiety and the fear and wanting to teach your kids about their identity and the heritage and taking them back maybe, or even if you haven't taken them back, talking to them about it, I felt that was a big need for many people.
Right. In reading the book, it's clear that first and perhaps second generation Somalis born outside of the country get a picture through reading this book of what it is like to go back where their parents were born. Was that intentional to have them, experience and not just be told about these stories, but experience it firsthand themselves?
Yes, it was absolutely intentional to use this book to teach first generation, second generation kids, yeah, even young adults, parents that might even have grown up here themselves and not know too much about Somalia or that heritage. I meant it to be sort of a conversation starter. I tried to have an idea, a new idea, or part of the culture, part of the heritage in every part of the story. It wasn't quite easy. It's a bit of a struggle to introduce new ideas, serious values, and put them in a way that the kids will be interested and will be engaged. But I absolutely meant for this book to be a teaching tool, to be a conversation starter with families and kids, and to introduce kids to that life back home, Somalia, how it's different, how it might be similar, some of the things that they can expect if they ever went back as children or even as adults. So that was quite intentional.
Okay, so the book also showcases the, like you said, the quintessential Somali upbringing and life in Somalia overall. Was it also intentional point to make in the book that everything that you hear from Somalia these days was excluded in your book, which is the violence, the denigration of society, the destruction of infrastructure? None of that was showed in the book. Was that also intentional to paint that picture?
Absolutely. So the struggle here is we already hear the negative things.
Right.
You could go to Google and put in the word Somali children, and you see starving kids. You see children with guns. You see the bomb blast sort of aftermath. You already might see or hear all the negative things. Our kids might be hearing about this in school, in the news, might be hearing about this when we when we are having very very fun conversations with people back home. So I wanted to tell a light-hearted story, a positive story, especially something that introduces life, protects the kids' innocence, and showcases that there are many positive aspects. Because I think when they're going back or when they go back, they already feel I can't get everything I used to be able to in Canada or in America or in Australia. They might feel like it's hot, they might feel like it's crowded. But what about the other aspect of having extended family, people that love you, being welcomed everywhere, the Somali way, having grandparents around, which maybe a lot of kids in the diaspora don't? I really wanted to showcase the positive aspect because I think we definitely get enough of the negative.
Yeah, I tell you, in reading the book myself, my kids are saying that one thing they're hung up on is the gifts. They're saying, we'll go back with you, Dad, if we're going to get those many gifts from our extended family. So that definitely resonated in your book with generations of Somalis that are born out here. Who did the illustrations on the book? It's very captivating, not just to read the book, but also to watch the stories that you're telling.
So I found someone that lives in United Arab Emirates.
Right.
I think she's originally from Pakistan that illustrated my book. I had to go international with my illustrations because, quite honestly, I had a dream, but not a lot of time or a lot of money. So I had to do this with people that live internationally, as you might know, who have different cost of living, who might be able to illustrate your book on a different budget than I could in Canada. So the individual that illustrated my book was a Muslim lady. Unfortunately, she's never met Somali people. She hasn't been, or maybe knowingly met Somali people. She didn't know the Somali culture. So I had to curate a bunch of images from Mogadishu, from a Somali family. I actually even sent her the picture of my own family when my husband took us to the airport with my two kids and how we are dressed, so that she could kind of get that Somali look, those Somali outfits. It was honestly quite a bit of a struggle, and I'm not sure if we got all the characters right, But I did get some feedback that at least Abshir and his mom do look like some Somali individuals that people know. So
Right.
every so often someone will say, this looks like my son, or I have, my friends has a few kids and one of them said, oh, this looks like my brother. So
Right.
it was a bit of a journey, but would have been a lot more ideal to have a Somali individual illustrate it, and I might find that in the future. But in this case, that's what we went for, and that was intentional. That was quite a bit of a struggle, but I think we got there eventually.
That's possibly a wink and a niche for all Somali illustrators, to come forward and perhaps participate in projects like this. You're right. You can tell it's not perfect, but it captures certain aspects of the story. A lot of the aspects actually of the story that you're telling. We never got to find out in the book at the end what Abshir's dad was, what was in store for Abshir when he comes back to Canada with his dad having a surprise for him. Is that a nudge or a inkling to show that there might be a sequel?
Absolutely. So this is a question that I get from all the kids that read this book and their parents that connect with me. I am selling my book on Amazon. So unfortunately, I don't actually get to find out everyone who bought my book, as opposed to if I was selling on my website. On Amazon, you don't get customers' information, but people do get in touch with me and say, my kids want to know the surprise. They really wanted to know what happens next. So I initially was going to end at that point, but given that I have 28 pages, children's attention span and all of that, I figured this was a story that deserved its own book, its own story. And I do have a sequel in the works for, the working title of that book is Abo's Spectacular Surprise. And it's going to be a surprise for Abshir and Ayan. Ayan sort of takes a backseat in this first book because she's quite young when they travel.
Right.
But I am going to have a surprise waiting for Abshir and Ayan, and that would definitely be in a book that I am working on right now.
So as you probably know, and our audiences are very aware of, there are a number of emerging and established Somali writers out there, be they writing in English or in Somali, but more so in English these days. Is there a connection between all of you guys? Do you guys network together? Do you bounce ideas off of each other? Is there a way that you guys connect, be that informally or formally?
Unfortunately, to my knowledge, this is a major gap. I have been thinking about this quite a lot lately, where you see people from other cultures or other communities in the same field collaborate, like you said, brainstorm ideas, have their own groups, Facebook, or maybe real life groups or book clubs and things like that.
Right.
As far as I am aware of, there isn't such a major movement. I do follow a few Somali writers on my social media accounts, and they follow me back. So we have a bit of interaction that way. I think we definitely need to work more on collaborating and supporting each other, promoting each other's work, working together maybe to do bigger projects that might need more than one person, like I just mentioned. Illustrators, graphic designers, I am sure they are out there. I haven't been able to find a Somali individual that does this, but within the writers or with other artists, journalists, I think there needs to be such an effort. I do belong to a Facebook group called Somali Writers. It's not quite active, but sometimes I post on there and I get some feedback, and I see other people post on there, and we interact in that way. I was also going to say, I think we are actually underrepresented in the field of writing. Yes, there are people out there, poets, writers, but if you look at, let's say, countries like Kenya or Nigeria that I'm familiar with, or let's say mainstream Canadians, there might be more, for example, Nigerian writers in one big city than there are Somali writers in North America, for example. So I think we're still leaning towards more of an oral society, and I think we need to write more of our stories, more of our history, more of our reality, more of our lived experiences, so that we don't just people don't just hear from us about us from other people. I mean, when you tell your own story, there's a power that comes with being that agent, with being that individual that brings their story to life, as opposed to a journalist, a European journalist, or let's say even another African journalist talking about you. So I think these efforts that I am doing, that you are doing, are very much needed.
Excellent. I can't say enough about, this book, Abshir's Big Adventure. Really and truly is a great work, and contributes majorly into Somali families' life here in the diaspora. And we would put all the details needed in the description for you to get a hold of this book, for not just for yourself, but for your kids as well. And, enjoy it for what it is worth, right? So, Mona, I can't thank you enough for your time and accepting our invitation to tell your story, and the story of perhaps how you came about in writing this book. Much appreciated. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time to speak with your audience, and I hope you have a great day.
You as well. Take care. Hey, thank you for visiting our YouTube channel. You should know that you can get updated Somali-related news and information in English on our website, somalidispatch.com. And also follow and subscribe to our social media channels and pages at Somali Dispatch so you can stay connected 24/7. Thank you.